The News Center, we have the political commentator Reese Colbert joining us today, coming at us from the political left, and on the political right, it's Republican strategist Matt Klink. So let's talk through some of these issues. Let me first, Matt, play another clip from Secretary Bessent, because we're all trying to figure out if this tentative deal that we and others have reported on is for real, and also what it might lead to. But here's how Bessent put it about the deal in the briefing earlier. Here he is.
The teams have been going back and forth, and President Trump has made it very clear, he talked about it at the cabinet meeting, that he has several red lines. And Iran has to turn over their highly enriched uranium. They cannot pursue a nuclear weapon. He's not going to take a bad deal. He's going to make a great deal for the American people.
To Libby Dean's point, he didn't want to or didn't speak to the president about it so that he could not, I guess, get ahead of the president, maybe, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that Donald Trump, the fact that they didn't speak, Bessent and the president didn't speak before he took to the podium, that really highlights the level of trust and respect that Donald Trump has for his Treasury Secretary. And look, the biggest challenge with the deal in Iran is that people who aren't involved in the negotiations are trying to position that they're the insiders and they know what's going on. You saw Mike Pompeo do it last week. And I think the most relevant words in there is Donald Trump is not going to cut a bad deal. So the Iranians are surly negotiators. I think Donald Trump's going to hold hard and fast, and we're not afraid to blow stuff up in Iran, as we've seen in the past week if we don't get what we want.
Apparently Oman as well, as the president talked about yesterday, or threatened yesterday. The one thing, Reese, that Bessent can speak about, it's right in his purview or wheelhouse or area of responsibility, is the economy and the effect this war is having on that economy. So here's what he said about gas prices.
What we've seen is actually oil prices are down about 10% in May. There are almost 2,000 ships waiting to come out of the Gulf. And I think the oil market is going to be very well supplied on the other side of this, and that we could see prices come down very quickly. These are short-term challenges that we will get over, and I think we'll move forward.
Yeah, it's interesting, Reese, because to me, all of that basically is and could be 100% true, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's not a challenging environment for Americans still paying, what they're paying for gas.
Absolutely. I mean, Brown University has an Iran war cost tracker that shows that an extra $49 billion and ticking have been paid by Americans as a result of this war on Iran. I think that the markets have already priced in a very optimistic notion that a deal is soon come, soon come, soon come. And so far, it has been false starts and stops. And so I don't know how much lower the prices are going to go, even with the deal, because I think they already expect the deal to happen. But regardless, the damage has been done. Donald Trump has already given Americans a raw deal in how much money we have spent for a war that could have been avoided if they had just saw through the negotiations that Iran was already prepared to agree to prior to any bombs dropping this time.
Well, I will say this about the deal. As far as we know, it seems like it would be, if it is what's being reported, a deal to talk about another deal. In other words, like it's just an agreement to talk about some of the bigger issues. But that agreement might open up the Strait of Hormuz, which was open before the war. We know all of those arguments. We have those discussions every day. But that appears to be what we're talking about. Again, we're waiting for the president to talk about it. While we do that, Matt, what about this? It kept coming up over and over. Kind of chuckle as I bring it up. How about the president's face on a $250 bill? It's our 250th birthday as a country, but here's this is the last clip from the briefing for now, but this was Bessent taking that question.
At Treasury, we prepare things in advance, so we have prepared in advance that if the legislation is passed, but we will stick to the law.
I just wonder what your opinion is personally. Do you think it's a good idea for the president to put his face on America?
Again, the president doesn't do it. The House and the Senate have to do it.
There you go. So I'll ask you, Matt. Is it a good idea to put Trump's mug on a $250 bill?
So that the serious answer is that by historical precedent, living people don't go on money.
Okay.
The non-serious answer is, so we're going to get rid of the penny and add the $250 bill. I mean, I think it's a little bit of, it's kind of ridiculous. Just goes to show you that any member of Congress can introduce legislation about anything. And I think it was Joe Wilson from South Carolina that did it. I think Congress has more important things on their plate right now than whether we need a $250 bill.
I would hope they do. The Democrats, of course, they're jumping on everything. We've seen Hillary Clinton actually tried to make a quote unquote funny about this earlier. Said, $250 would be enough to buy a gallon of gas and that kind of stuff. A carton of eggs. So if he wants to put his face on it, that's what that's where we are economically. Okay. Your thoughts on this, if you have any, Reese?
I would support Trump's face going on the penny that's going out of style.
Okay.
But what
So
happened to
there you go.
Harriet Tubman?
What
happened to Harriet Tubman?
Not bad.
I'm still waiting on the $20 bill that was signed into law to have Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. Let's start there, Donald Trump, with that order of business before you go create a whole other currency that doesn't exist with your face on it.
All right, that's enough of that for now. We'll see what happens with it. All right, let's talk a little politics while you guys are both here. And, in the midst of this, in a midterm year, where do we go? What's happening? What are the dynamics? What's next? New York Times, both parties kind of get it wrong. The young men who may swing the midterms, and they write about this. So let's talk about it for a moment. The president, Matt, did well on a relative basis compared to Republicans of the past with young male voters, not a constituency the Republicans normally do well with, but this president did in 24. Now, maybe they're, as the polls show, not so thrilled with him. Okay, does that mean the Democrats pick up these voters? Something that should be a worry for Republicans? Matt, how do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, look, Donald Trump did very well with young male voters in 2024, in part because the Democratic Party had spent the last decade demonizing young men with, the vice president's husband talking about toxic masculinity. So their economic frustration right now is real, but that doesn't mean that they have a sudden ideological conversion to a party that wants to demean the young men's ability as builders, as workers, as fathers, and as providers. So I think that, it's still wide open. It's not a question of if they vote Democrat. I think the real question is, do they vote at all?
Do they vote at all? Right. So that you're right. That is the question, Reese, I think, is that, okay, if these people, you could apply this to other groups as well, but for this conversation, we're talking about young male voters. Let's just say they aren't happy and they don't think the president's lived up to what they thought, those who voted for him. Does that necessarily mean they're going to show up and be enthusiastic about Democrats, or does the Democratic Party have some work to do?
I think the Democratic Party has some work to do, and I don't think that, the circumstances that they find themselves in terms of young men is enough necessarily to compel all these people to necessarily switch teams. However, things are pretty bad for them. Starting July 1st, there are going to be massive changes to student loan payments, to student aid. It's already a bleak landscape for people who are coming out of college in terms of job opportunities. Costs are up. So there's plenty of incentive for self-preservation for these folks to jump ship. The question is, do they care more about the rhetorical wins, about the culture wars and the bro culture, or do they care more about their future? If they care more about their future, then I don't see how this doesn't help Democrats, that this is such a dire circumstance for pretty much everybody who's not rich in this country.
All right, it's one of many kind of
Democrats
issues.
want them to talk about their feelings.
Well, see, the Democrats probably got hurt by some of that last time around. But whether, now it goes back the other way, I do think it's an open question, especially for 28, which we'll talk about a little later in the show. We have some numbers on that. All right, Reese and Matt, good discussion as always. I want to get back to some of the news here. We'll see if we hear from the president as we continue. It's 11 past the hour on this deal or